Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Measured Golf Podcast, where I, Michael Dutro, have fantastic guests on, and we talk all things amazing golf performance things that we can possibly come up with in about an hour. So, this week is really special. We took a little time off for the holidays and whatnot, and this guy's been traveling a bunch because he's a busy man this time of year because it's college golf season. And we're very fortunate to have none other than Kevin Rhoads, the men's head coach from from the Harvard University. And we're very, very excited to have him on because Kevin kind of has a very long track record with the game of golf. Not only is he currently the men's coach, but for a very long time was both the men's and women's coach at Harvard. And not only that, also kind of hangs around a pretty cool place. It's got some history in golf lore called the Country Club in Brookline, Massachusetts. So Kevin is fortunate enough to be the lead instructor out there as well for that membership and does a fantastic job as well as helping the men and women of Harvard. And generally, it's just good for the game of golf and has like lots of fun stories. So we thought we'd have him on. So without further ado, Kevin, you want to say hello to everybody?
Michael, thanks very much for having me on. It's a true honor. I met Michael at the 2020 U.S. Open at Brookline and have felt fortunate to keep in touch ever since. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was. I was just showing Kevin an old picture of us with. He's definitely a mentor and a hero of mine, and I would imagine Kevin would probably feel the same. But I was showing him a
Indeed.
picture of the three of us at the country club, and it was Pete Cowan was the third, and we were fortunate enough to get to spend some time talking to the man in black himself. And I just thought it was really cool, man. Like he is just. I don't know how he strikes you, but like when I think of Pete Cowan, I think of a pro's pro. What do
Bro,
you think?
what do you think? Yeah, the best. I mean, to have someone that has the knowledge base that he does, the playing ability that he does, to be able to like truly relate to best players in the world, and then to have the teaching passion, skills to be able to like help other people like become great. He's completely extraordinary. So yeah,
I tell you something I
everything.
saw cool. I saw Pete at the this past year's Open Championship, and obviously things were going on, but Henrik Stenson happened to be there hitting balls on the range really late at night, and he wasn't playing in the field. But I guess when you're Henrik Stenson, they let you do that kind of stuff, right? So Henrik Stenson's at the range at the Open late. I think it was either Friday or Saturday night, and all of a sudden, Henrik's young son pulls a golf club out of Henrik's big staff bag and like starts hitting golf balls too. And I thought it was the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life, Kevin. Like, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, this is at a major championship, right? But dude, nobody does anything about it. Nobody says it. It's awesome. It's the coolest thing ever. They're just letting this dad and his son hit some balls together. It's like a thing of beauty. And Pete's down there with Thomas working with him and kind of wraps up with Thomas. And Pete walks over and starts talking to him a little bit. And the next thing you know, Pete walks over to the kid and I thought, oh man, Pete's gonna like give him the runoff and be like, "Hey kid, you can't be doing this right now, and this isn't the time and place." He didn't do anything like that. He like spent 20 minutes working with the kid, showed him a couple things. The kid noticeably hit the ball a little bit better. Like, I mean, dude, it was amazing, and it's like that in my mind is like what it's all about, right? Like, the title, the ego, the mystique of Pete Cowan, in that moment meant nothing, and all he wanted to do was help somebody else hit the golf ball a little bit better. Like, how cool is that, man?
Golf, we're very lucky that we have a bunch of people like that in our sport. Not anyone that's like him necessarily, but a bunch of people who the game is the important thing, and they'll pass it on. And he's got the juice, and he's got the awareness to know whether that would work then or not. So like, I don't know, we're very lucky, that's for sure.
It's amazing, man. And another instructor that I don't know that I would say that a lot of his swing stuff is stuff that I kind of use in any way, but something that's always struck me about David Ledbetter is if you meet anybody who's ever worked for Led, including Led himself, they are pros. They're utmost professionals. Andrew Park, Gary Gilchrist. I mean, these guys are just solid individuals. And honestly, it's what attracted me the most to you is that you're a really solid guy in your own right, man. And I don't think that there's any qualms about that, or I don't think you would be the person to lead the group of individuals that you're leading right now.
Well, that's very nice of you to say it the way that you did. But I'm lucky, excuse me. I come from a family of golf professionals. So my dad
Where are
played
you
the tour
from,
for
by the
7
way? I
years.
don't think that people know this. I didn't know this until I did the research. Where are you from, Kev?
Yeah. I'm a West Coast guy. Grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, California. Um, Just yeah, I mean, my dad grew up in Southern California. He played the tour, went to USC, was an All-American there, played the tour for 7 years, and then came off the tour straight into the job that he held for 41 years. He was the head professional at San Francisco Golf Club for 41 years.
What was it
Just
like
a
growing up there, Kev? What was that like? I
uh,
mean,
well, we didn't, we weren't members there, so
you got to play a little bit, right? Like you got
we
out on
snuck
a Monday every now and then,
on
maybe?
Mondays, yeah. So, but it's this extra special place with extra special members, extra special golf course,
Yeah.
and a true respect for the game and reverence for the game. They're all people that like love the game and know it really really well. So I think my dad felt very very fortunate that that's the place that he went, and that's why he stayed as long as he did. And
Yeah. I mean,
I
that's a
mean,
long career at a club. I mean, people don't realize like that's a really difficult thing to do because when you work at a high-end private club, they tend to be managed by the board. And
yeah,
the thing is that the board comes out of the general membership, and the
yeah,
chances that you upset a member are pretty good in the private golf business. So, every
yeah.
year there's or every couple years there's some turnover, and it's hard to keep everybody like kind of in your corner, man. So hats off to your dad. That's not an easy feat.
There's all these things that I kind of, there's some Mark Twain quote that said something about, when I was a kid of 16, then, I thought my dad was the most ignorant man in the world. And then, by the time I was 21, I was amazed at how much he had learned. But I never thought that about my dad. And yet, when I went away to UCLA and was not recruited, was trying to make the golf team there, and then was reading as much as I could from best players and then, best sports psychology, and listening to interviews and just observing as much as I could. I got a much greater sense of how correctly my dad did things. Because every time a good player would say, well, I think about it this way or whatever, come to this conclusion, I'd be like, oh, that's what my dad says. And that just happened over and over and over again. And then, that's on a playing side. And then to be able to transfer that into a club side and a teaching side, I'm 20 years in at the same place, and it's the greatest place in the world, and I'm the most lucky well, both places, both at the country club and at Harvard. I work around great people all day every day, and it's a huge reason why I'm not back on the West Coast where my a lot of my family is. But I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And yet I look at that, and that 20 years in, and my dad did more than double that in the same place. And I'm like, how do you have the energy to keep on going, the consistency, the value system, all that stuff. And so, for me to have that as my primary example, and then to continue that, the director of golf at the country club is Brendan Walsh, and he's, tied for the best in the business. Director of golf at Harvard is Fred Schernecker, and he's an unbelievable mentor. And, so I'm incredibly lucky. So yeah, something like that.
That's kind of wild, man. I mean, I always tell people I think golf is this incredible gateway for young people. And the
Yeah.
reason I say that is because I look at like my background and where I come from and definitely had it better than most. And I'm not trying to paint any negative pictures, but I definitely was exposed to things through golf that I wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to. And I really do not believe that I would be as successful or feel the way I feel about myself if it wasn't for golf in my life. So I just think that it's interesting to hear like, growing up not necessarily at San Francisco Golf Club. And I understand what you mean. I've worked at private clubs. You're not a member. You get to kind of like see it a little bit better than most, but you don't necessarily get to like play with all the shiny things. So I get what you mean, but at the same time, you're still around those people. And to your
Yeah.
point, right? Like those are really motivated, highly successful people. That's why they're at that club. And when you start hanging around those types of people, you start picking up on their habits, right? So, a lot of people there are going to be a little better read than maybe at the public university or the public school. So, I mean, you just kind of pick up on these habits. And like you said, man, you've always kind of been in these positions to where it's like such a great spot to be. if you can kind of like maybe slow down the ego a little bit and go, hey, let me sit back and learn a little bit, like you're going to really take in a lot.
It's one of the hardest things, I think, when you're younger, which is if you have some faith in yourself and you know kind of what your aptitude and abilities are, it's like I should have everything right now. And it does feel that way. And it does take a long time kind of to find your way, to find the right people to be around, for awesome people in front of you to kind of like let their careers run their course and then, eventually have space for you. So but yeah, that balance between patience and also still working as hard as you can to know as much as you can to be as good as you can. I think that's a hard balance. But anyway, sometimes we get lucky and sometimes we find that.
Compartmentalization and time management skills that you have to possess must be off the charts because I mean, you're not doing anything that's kind of easy, man. You know what I mean? Like running a golf team is difficult. Like I mean, I work and consult with several, Division 1, Division 2 programs. And I mean, the commitment on the kids is off the charts relative to a normal non-athlete, student going to school. And when you and I'm not trying to say that Harvard does it better, Harvard does it different or anything like that, but it's just there are expectations that are different when you go to the Ivy Leagues, especially when it comes to academia. And I mean, the load that the young men and women that you've coached in the past have at Harvard is unfathomable. And you're expected to lead these people. And what most people don't realize about college coaching is there's never any time to do anything because of breaks and because of, there's a calendar and, you can only do so much. And then you're going from there and you're like, okay, well, let me have a little downtime. I just spent all my day with these future leaders and achievers. Now let me go take a little downtime. And you cruise over to, the country club. And now you're teaching a bunch of high end, expecting to be achieving adults. And like they expect results. And you're able to go and deliver an amazing coaching experience for them and then do everything else that you do, man. I mean, like that's no small feat. And I think that that's really overlooked by a lot of young coaches in terms of the time management you need to be successful in this industry.
Well, as always, you say things extremely well, nuanced. You're able to put yourself in other people's positions unusually well. So that said, it's all that is very kind to me. Like I said, there's a lot of things going for the situations that I'm in that really I just feel very fortunate for. So, for example, the academic stuff, balancing academics and trying to be the best players that we can be. First, if you're not eligible, you can't do it. But our kids are very much, not every place is unique, and the big hope is each person finds the place that's the best fit for them. The kids that we are very fortunate to get and that I'm very fortunate to work on, one thing I never have to do is tell them to study or like do what you need to do just to be eligible. It's so who they are that they would never not work as hard as they could to get the best grades that they could in school. And so, that's not an issue. What that does do is it does make it interesting to try to then balance how do you also be as good as you can be, golf wise. And again, we're very fortunate to recruit kids that are really good competitive players before they come here. And I think the biggest challenge that we have is um, we get every once in a while someone who wants to turn professional and kind of pursue that, and occasionally that happens for sure. But we most of the kids are kind of gonna turn pro in something else,
Right.
and I feel like absolutes are easier to pursue when you're like, I put everything into being the best student I can be, or I put everything into I'm going to be a professional golfer. Those are, not that it's an easy road in either direction, but it's easier to say, oh, well, all my decisions are made for me because I'm all about this.
Right.
When they're trying to excel at both, and they have to kind of be nuanced about, as you said, time management, and also kind of how do I prioritize and when. The message we always send is academics first and then golf is a close second. That's We're looking for people that have alignment in their value system in that way. But it's easier said than done. It's hard to go to a big D1 college tournament for our kids with players that a number of our kids have competed very well against in the past, and they go there and we've been spending it's something like, between 2/3 and 3/4 the amount of time on golf that they are. And yet we want to, our guys want to, and our gals want to kick everyone, butt, just like the other kids want to
Yeah,
kick our
like
butt.
yeah.
So anyway,
And they
so
do for the
it's a,
most part. I mean, you've had from that's the thing that is wild to me is like you have had very high levels of success, Kevin. Like this is not the reason I wanted to have you on. It's not a normal college coaching job. I mean, as much as your humility shines through and you try to minimize that you're just doing what you do, and I respect that, like it's not a normal job. Like we're talking about, golf and school. Well, these kids also are, college aged, right? And want to have social lives too. So we got to fit that in there. And the thing is to your point, it's very difficult to do. And your kids that you're working with are not only doing that, but they're also having success in both lanes. And I think that's a testament to leadership always.
well, um, thanks. I keep coming back all the time to I'm very lucky because my dad, I was around it early, but my dad never forced it. I would, when he came off tour, he was still invited to play in the Crosby every year. Bing Crosby was a member at San
Yeah.
Francisco Golf Club and stuff. So we'd go down and watch him compete in that. And like, I thought that was what golf was for a long time. But then when I started, really, it's like mid high school when I started trying to get better at the game and then deciding I think I want to try to play in college. And then like I kept at it my first couple of years at UCLA when I wasn't on the team. And I think just because I continued to have such strongly positive experiences with the game, then I don't know. And my dad just kept on doing it at such a high level over and over again that I just have I have very high passion for being around it at whatever the highest level is that I can be. And so I hope that that's, one of the big things. We go in and out, and I'm sure that our kids have felt, more or less of this from me over the years. But for the most part, I really like being around people. I really like trying to get people to be as good as they can. Well, I like them to. I like to try to help people get what they want, whatever that is. And if I'm with some high performing people and I can keep things in a positive, healthy, controllable as much as possible light, that's what I'm lucky that that's what I enjoy doing. So
Yeah. And I
anyway,
mean, that's just general life rules, right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
you can have an amazing impact on so many people just by like saying their name to them. It's kind of one
yeah,
of the oldest
yeah,
tricks in the book, right? Like I, stop wherever I stop in the mornings and get like a coffee or something. And it's like, they got pretty high turnover because it's a stressful, crappy job and like nobody wants to do that. And it's like, I swear to you, man, sometimes like I always look at their name tag and I always call them by name. And the look you get
awesome.
from some people just for like recognizing the fact that like they're just a human being, right? It's crazy, man. So I don't disagree, but I still think it's amazing like what you guys do. I mean, it's just really high performing culture. And that's one of the biggest things I wanted to talk to you about is, you've seen it from the playing perspective, you've seen it from the club perspective, you've seen it from the coaching perspective, right? Like, and you kind of know like there's some like just non-starters. You've already kind of alluded to that, right? Like I
Mm,
don't have to tell a young man or woman at Harvard that they need to study. Like that kind of, we don't
yeah.
need to even bring that conversation up. They already know the rules. But like, what are some of those things you think that really stick out in these high performing cultures that maybe you notice when you go, and you don't have to, I'm not asking you to bash anywhere or anything,
Sure, sure,
but
sure.
like these things that stand out at other facilities, and you're like, man, I don't know how this is going to work without having this thing in place.
Yeah, yeah. No, so again, my mentors that I've had, and between my dad and my uncle, and then Rick Martino, who was the director of instruction for the PGA of America when I worked for him for a year and a half, coming from Oakmont. He was coming from Oakmont, and then Brendan Walsh, and then Fred Schernicker. At all these places, these are super high performing individuals, and they care about people. And it's both as simple or as complex as you want to make that. But I continually uh, not have to remind myself because it is somewhat who I am. I do like people and I care about people. A lot of times people say, I'm too nice or what it is, but that's balanced with really badly wanting to do well also. Because I think if I'm only nice and I don't try to help people, and we aren't successful, any of the stuff that we're trying to convey to them starts to ring hollow, and it doesn't really, give the impact. So, or
Gold
if we're
right
just
there,
trying to
Kevin.
like,
That's gold.
yeah,
That is such gold right there, man. You are absolutely right. You cannot just soft pedal it all the time with people, man, because
yeah,
you never learn. That just becomes the norm, and it just
yeah,
becomes normal, right? And it's I think what you said there, man, so many people miss that to where, I kind of I run a facility, right? So I'm around the people that I work with a lot more common than most coaches are around their clients, maybe for
mm,
the weekly lesson or whatever. I'm seeing my players 2, 3 times a week if they're coming here to the facility. So it's really interesting though how people are like, man, I can't believe they ever come back here. And I'm like, why? And they're like, man, you just ripped them a new one. Like that didn't seem fun at all. Like I wouldn't come back for that. And I'm like, yeah, like I get it, and you're right, and that's why I would never rip you that way. Because if I
right,
rip you that way and you don't have that want and that drive, you're just gonna fold up and think I'm a jerk and like think I'm taking a bad day out on you. But
good,
with my youngsters, like when I rip on them, right? They go out and they figure it out, and most of my kids, because this is what I recruit, they're kids that need that. That fires them up, and they come back harder at you.
awesome,
And what I'm looking for is them to come back, right? And go, hey, man, thanks for giving me that because I needed that because I wasn't doing my job. And when you can get kids to start thinking that way and start being able to handle some constructive criticism, dude, it changes everything because then when you are nice with them, they know it's sincere and they know
yeah.
that they're doing well because they know that you'll tell them when they're not.
Yeah, that's super well said. And it is a challenge that I will run into sometimes with, if we have limited time to work on golf, and I do think confidence is something that I try to protect at all costs for sure.
Amen.
And then I have to be careful and write a line, because if I'm always boosting confidence, then when are they learning and when are they getting anything of value? So, but if I'm, always ripping, that doesn't probably work either. And I think a lot of times our kids' effort is never an issue with them. I think before I started, college coaching here, if I had any conception of Harvard, it would be, oh, it's all just a bunch of brilliant people and they like don't even have to work. That's not, they're gifted. And
Oh,
certainly from an aptitude standpoint, they're very, very high aptitude. But I would say the thing overwhelmingly in, 19 or 20 years of working here is that effort level is just sky high all the time. So most of the time I never need to correct, because I don't need to yell at them like ever, because that would be if they weren't trying or if they needed a different motivation, and that's never a problem. I have to find ways to kind of convey a message based on, I know you're trying as hard as you can, but still we need to be correct in this way. And I read a thing, it was just an article about reflections on Saban this week, and one of the things that one of his coaching staff said about him is, so I don't know, I've never met Coach Saban, but talks about, if you're not coaching it, then you can't expect it. That really coach, tell them what you want and why it's a value and stuff like that. And I do find sometimes in my lesser good moments, when I'm more tired and more less patient and stuff like that, there are certain things that I might consider like base foundational things, and they maybe don't do it, and I'm like, what are you and in my bad space, I'll get mad at him, at least to myself, and say, why aren't you doing that? And then I think about it more and say, well, I guess I haven't clearly asked for that yet. They don't know why it's a value. They don't know that they're doing it or not doing it. So just tell them, and tell them why. Most of the time, our kids, if I tell them why and what's behind it, the value behind it, they'll get behind it if they know why it's either going to help them or it's going to help our group. So I think that's one of the other things that in my better space, it's always like, you need to coach what you believe and what you think is important. And then don't be surprised if they don't know it yet. I kind of think more and more, I think common sense doesn't that much exist. I think, where everyone's coming from, it's more global and, different experiences and stuff like that. So don't be surprised if someone doesn't know something, just explain why it's a value. So,
I think that's gold too. I mean, I'm going to take it a slightly different way. And I agree with you, right? Like as a coach, man, like for example, on the weekends, I'm slamming coaching all weekend. It's wild. But like, I'm standing there and it's like maybe the sixth person I've taught that day or whatever. And I'm like, to your point, like I'm a little tired, I'm a little cranky. And it's like, I see him do something and it's like, man, like I know you know better. You know what I mean? Like I know we've
Yeah.
talked about this. And you want to walk over and like slap him upside the head and be like, why don't you get this? But at the same time, man, like there's been so many times to where I've walked out there and just flippantly made a comment to somebody. They're like, "Oh my God, you've never said that before." And it's like, no,
Right.
that's all I've ever said. You know what I mean? Like, and like they receive it a different way. So
Yeah.
I think one of those
Yeah.
things that you have to remind coaches is like you just have to keep coaching what's in front of you. It's not about what you coached before. It's not about what you're going to coach 6 months from now. Like you just got to show up and coach what's in front of you. So one of my big rules that I try to have is like I have amazing technology. I have the best technology that there is. I have it all. I have whatever you want, right? I have
So cool.
everything. So like I know that like if I show up and I'm present, then I'm not going to get this wrong. Like
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm not going to be rude. I'm not going to be disrespectful. I'm not going to say anything and put my foot in my mouth. If I can just like show up and be present, this golf experience is going to go really well for this person. So that's all I
Oh,
got to do, man. And it's like it's so hard to do that in like the modern age when you're running around and doing this and doing that. But man, it's like it's refreshing to hear somebody else say that because it's so true, man. Like you just really have to keep like that's the thing about being a coach, man. It's you're never done being a coach. You're always coaching until you go out in a wooden box. So, you just got to keep doing it.
I love everything you said there. I think it's right on. And it does remind me again, I'm very lucky. I have 11-year-old twin girls and, certain things it's like, and they are phenomenal kids and I'm so lucky. But, we need as humans, we need constant attention. We need constant reminders. We need this. And if we keep on doing that and can remember that that's what it takes to kind of help develop a human, then yeah, then we show up, be patient, be present, and then a lot of good things will happen over time.
Yeah,
So
I mean it's wild, right? I mean, I I I find it hilarious, man. We're really fortunate that I really think like you're an agent of calm. I mean, that's what I would refer to you as. And that's kind of like the college coaches I advise, like that's what I always call them. I call them agents of calm. Because if you kind of think about it, man, like in certain situations, the coach tends to be at the facility a whole lot, right? Like that's kind of like their little nest. And it's like these birdies are just flying in all day. And like, dude, everything in their life is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, and we're not talking about men and women of Harvard who maybe have it a little more put together. We're talking about maybe this kid's making a 2.5 GPA and hanging on by a thread. So, I mean, you're constantly the one place that these people are going that's consistent. And like the trick for a college coach, I think, is you can kind of be a little over the top negative. You can be a little over the top, positive, but you better be consistent with it, right?
yeah,
Because like if you're not creating that sense of calm in that nest, then these kids aren't going to keep gravitating towards you, and then you're going to have a real hard time getting all your hens to want to fly in one direction.
that's
So
awesome. And a great reminder because it's true. They take so many cues from us, either on purpose or not. And
nonverbal,
what
nonverbal.
totally, totally. So if we're amped up and stuff like that about, a shot didn't go well or a round didn't go well, then they're justified in also feeling that way too, because that's what they saw modeled. So I love your calm in the middle of the storm analogy. I think that's right
And I,
on.
it's crazy. Like I just did another podcast the other day. I was invited on, and they asked me, they're like, "What's the one thing that you do now that you wish you would have been doing like when you started coaching?" Right? Like, what's the big thing? And I really think they thought I was going to say something about ground reaction forces or something like that, and kind of get the answer they wanted. But
Yep.
I gave them my honest answer, which is NeuroPeak Pro, right? And teaching kids how to breathe. And like
Cool.
has been without a doubt the single number one thing that if you improve your breathing, you improve performance. It
Cool.
fixes a lot of things. And it's like, once again, do we want these kids to perform well? Of course we do. We want
Yep.
these kids to perform better than anybody else. Like we're invested in this. We've spent money. We've got time. We've got feelings. We've got all these things invested in these kids. We want them to do so well and we push them so hard. And I'm not saying you do per se, but I'm just saying in general, society pushes them so hard. And then it's
Indeed.
like, oh, we're overstimulated. we have absolutely no room left to like take anything on. And that first shot that goes crooked out there, man, it's like the world caves in on their skull because they cannot internally regulate. So, in my
Well said.
mind, I mean, that's just what it's all about in life is being able to absorb what's coming at you and make good decisions and hopefully not have the same thing keep happening. So, breathing I think is kind of important. And when I talk to these teams, man, and you see the teams that are having success, it's just funny to me how much it's less about the X's and O's at this level, Kevin, and way more about the human factor, if you will.
So kind of two quick thoughts about that. One, that just I'm again from the San Francisco Bay Area, so I'm a Golden State Warriors fan and a Celtics fan. But
That's got to be
I'm
a
a
little
huge.
weird from time to time.
Yeah, well, totally. So, but awesome in all ways. And Steve Kerr, I'm a big fan, and
Me too.
someone, yeah, kind of sent a quick hit that he did, and he was talking about kind of what, what he experienced when he started coaching, and went to go see a lot of different coaches. One of them, which was Pete Carroll, and was in a camp with him, and like the end of the second day, called him into his office. So and Pete Carroll's like, "What are you going to coach?" And he's like, "Well, like, what do you mean? What offense am I going to run?" And Carroll said something like, "No, that doesn't even matter. It's like, what are you going to coach?" And Kerr said, I didn't know what he meant, but eventually it got to like, your value system. What do you truly believe in? And that will set kind of the tone for what the players are going to experience day in and day out. And if we kind of know ourselves and know what that stuff is, and then try to model it, then I think that's going to be super helpful. And I love a couple of the, one of them was competitiveness, but another one was empathy, and another one was joy. And I don't know, I've gotten that from that team and watching that for many years, and it's pretty fun to watch. But the other thing that made me think, in the breathing and the space to take what comes at you and kind of thing. I had a player at the club asked me to read a book to vet it that just came out like not that long ago. But it's by Dr. Raymond Pryor, and it's called Golf Beneath the Surface. Maybe you've read it or not, but I really like it. I think it brings a lot of different things together that I think we've heard, or we've heard snippets of for a long time, but it kind of yeah, brings them in under one cover, and I'd recommend it to a lot of people. I think it's pretty fantastic. So,
Right there. I didn't even
hey,
have to look that hard. So this is the Mindful Athlete with George Mumford. Uh,
awesome.
and like this goes back to what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
So this is like hot topic, right? Like you go and look for mindfulness and any of that. Like, I mean, you can't get more like on topic and on brand if you try. But when you read this book, George Mumford was brought in to work with the Bulls during their
amazing.
run. We're going back to the 80s, brother. And like that, once again, like this breathing, this mindfulness, this, getting to a creative space to where you can slow down the stress and kind of see plays unfolding before they do. This all goes back to like breathing, and it's not something that's new. Like I know like we bring up I say neuropeak problem, people are like, oh, that's all witch doctor stuff, and like it's all new. No, it's not new. It's just once again, it's taking technology, right,
Yep,
and applying it to a concept that maybe is very old, and
yep,
then using that technology to show somebody how to apply that concept. Like that's all it is
awesome.
a training tool, right? So I think that, there's a lot of those things that go into these high performing cultures that have just been around forever. But I think the great thing about social media is like guys like, you and me could have conversations and we can compare notes now. And it's like I think a lot of our best secrets are really the basic stuff that just kind of goes into being well-rounded and being able to perform at a high level. Obviously recovery is a big one. I cannot stress enough, and I'll say it to you, and I'm not sure if you guys do this or not, but for college athletes, I think the single best thing you can do with them is a whoop strap. And I don't even
Yeah,
think it have to be an athlete. I think just for young people in general, and I'm not saying that like I necessarily think that the whoop strap is the most accurate or any of that stuff. But what it is it's consistent onto itself. And now at least that person can understand what's going on with them. And like when
yeah.
these young people start seeing like how much this sleep really screws them up, man, like they kind of course correct themselves.
Isn't that great? Yeah, God, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's fantastic, and you don't have to, have it on for that long before you start to know your way of doing things and knowing what
I don't
works for
have one
you.
on now in full
Yep.
disclosure. I mean, I know somebody's gonna get on the internet
Yep.
and kill me. I don't have mine on right now. I haven't worn it in about a month.
Yep.
But I know my numbers are pretty much set. Like I know
Yeah.
exactly what I have to do, and that like, if I'm not in bed by 10, I can't get my sleep score to 70, and I need my sleep score to be at 70 so my recovery is at 92 or 93. So I mean, like just knowing that stuff, man, a lot. If I can get my recovery in the green and I show up
Yep.
to play golf, man, I'm going to play better or at least feel better playing at a
Yep.
92 than I am a 65.
And who knew alcohol didn't make you sleep better?
Wow, that's weird, right? Like, I think that's why Whoop has such a hard time with adults because they just hate seeing how much that beer really hurts.
Uh, I love it. I
It's
love it.
it's crazy though, man. But I mean, I really think, I've spent less and less time kind of traveling and doing education, like taking in education. I've been doing more education myself. But the education I am taking in, man, I keep finding myself at like these biohacking like conventions because I really, once again, to kind of drive this home, I'm talking to a guy that's achieving a lot at a really premier program that has really high standards, but once again, what are we talking? We're not talking like swing plane and all that. I mean, I really think it's more about the human element as you go up in levels.
Incredible. Yeah. I agree. And again, the more I know, the more, whoops,
Oh
Peter.
boy, there you go.
Um, yeah. The more I
Well,
know,
that
the more I agree with what you just said. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I can't imagine like you. Can you imagine going back to your playing days, like with the information that you have now? Like it's wild, isn't it? Like, I mean, I'm sure you think that way, just like I think that way, right? Like, if we
Yeah.
had force plates and TrackMan and like actually understood like that we were breathing like idiots because we were 18 and you know what I mean? Like,
We could
man,
have been
what could
so
we have
good.
crazy?
I know. So I know we do the best we can with what the available info is, and we know a lot now, which is it is really fun. I feel very lucky to be teaching and coaching at this time. It's awesome.
Your favorite? I'm curious. You get to wear a lot of different hats, which I'm jealous of because I get forced into just a couple of them. But and you get
Yeah.
to see the sun, which I never do, as you can tell.
That's why you
But
look way better than I do.
yeah.
Uh,
So my curiosity is like, where's your happy place teaching? Like if you had to go and teach today, okay, you can
yeah.
be at Harvard with the men and women or just the men, you can be at Brookline, you can be wherever you want to be. Like where's your happy place coaching? Like if you had to give one golf lesson the rest of your life, what are you coaching and where are you coaching at?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, my answer is going to be a hedge, of course, because it really is that I like all of the different things that I get to do because they're different. The commonality is that I generally get to spend time with people that are choosing to spend time with me. Nobody's forced to, it's all like by choice. So they're
They're
kind
even
of
paying
more,
sometimes. Isn't that crazy?
yeah.
Like they even pay you a little bit. Like that's
Hey,
even
how about that?
wilder.
Well said. But so they're relatively open. They're very relatively like happy to whatever. But I love all of it. So, at the club, I'm very lucky that, we have driving range and we have practice putting green and short game area, but there's also a third nine, the Primrose nine, where I love being able to get out on the golf course and actually take things, see what's presenting when they're out there, letting them talk me through things, observing what they're doing that might be different than what's on the range, deciding whether we just stay out there longer or whether we like take what we learned out there and then go to a place that's a little bit more efficient and do that back in the practice area. But that's another thing that I do feel very lucky about the college coaching is, which is instead of an hour, half hour, 15 minutes where I get to spend with someone, usually in a practice area, in the college coaching, I get to watch them do all of it. I watch them practice. I watch them play for fun. I watch them play for qualifying. I watch them compete, and I get to also cross reference all those things and say, well, which things really are showing up when they're under pressure or they're, playing in a competitive round, and then work my way back to all those other areas, which might be the best place to help them work on those things to get them ready to go back out and do it again. So, I love the variety, and I marvel every year that both the club and the school let me do both of those, and that my wife and my family also let me do those things because I really like all of them.
That's awesome, man. And I think one thing, if you're still listening to this podcast to this point, you may kind of get a feeling that Kevin has to be fake. That this can't be real. He can't be this happy. He can't be this joyful. But I can assure you, every time I've ever talked to him, he's this way. And I honestly try to live up to that standard that Kevin presents because, I feel the same way Kevin does. We have the greatest jobs in the world. We do them at completely different places. He could tell me a laundry list of reasons why he's right, and I could tell him a laundry list of reasons why I'm right. But at the same time, like we both legitimately feel that we have the best jobs in the world because I believe I do and he believes he does. So we're very fortunate because we both know what we enjoy doing. And that's obviously helping others, right? And there's a lot of different ways that you can help people. And I think one of the things that I enjoy the most about golf is that it is so closely related to life. There's a lot of life lessons out there. And, I love golf. It's very challenging and complex. And I love the fact that, I can go out there and play with somebody that knows, technically a third of what I know, and he goes out there and beats me. And that
Yeah.
really it doesn't sit well with me, but it happens, and that's just the way it goes, man. It's one of those games to where you never can stop learning because you're always going to find something new. And it's one of those games where you can never stop improving because the courses just keep getting harder and harder. So
Yep.
um,
Yep.
you kind of have
Uh,
to stay at it.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know. Early on, I probably had a preference for not stating that stuff as overtly, just because I don't know, it sounded wrong, maybe how I was growing up or whatever, to, golf as metaphor for life and stuff. But it's totally true. And the more I go, maybe it's more age appropriate now that I can say things like that a little bit or sneak it in there a little bit. But it's true. All the things that you said, it's hard, it's fun, it's you never you certainly never master it, that's for sure.
No,
I don't know if you get to compete some, but I definitely, again, with my dad as my model, my dad's still working on his game and still competing and loves it. And luckily I do, when I can do it, I do it just because I think it's fun. And I think when I stopped playing, that was the first thing I wrote down, which is don't forget what it's like to be a player. Because I can sit on the other side of that and tell people what to do or try to coach them up the right way and stuff. But trying to continually relate to what that's like, I think is really, really important, at least for me.
let me
So
throw this one at you. You might like this. I had made a decision late last year. I was over in London with some of my good mates that are new friends of mine over there, and they were nice enough to take me out and play some golf. And
nice,
I really fell in love with golf again, thanks to a guy by the name of James Day. And James
nice.
has a golf club collection that would make you blush. And I mean, he's got all the cool, it's nothing that's like crap. It's all like really cool stuff, like from back when we were younger and whatnot. So I got to play with some old clubs at a really cool golf course called the Addington, and we had a real blast. But I had a
Awesome.
weird experience. We played, the weather wasn't great. It rained. I didn't have golf shoes. I was in tennis shoes, so my feet were soaked. And like I'm one of those super prepared guys. Like I've got the full Galvin Green rain. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Indeed.
so out of my element here, and I should be miserable. I should just be fuming. I'm not playing overly well. Like nothing's going right. But I just had this amazing experience because we were playing golf. It didn't
Yeah.
matter like what the shots did. Like we were just playing golf, man. And like I was like, there's something there because I've been a miserable golfer for a long time. And I'm just no fun to play golf with. I know that. And it's not because I like throw a temper or anything. It's just I'm pretty quiet because honestly, I'm just kind of like frustrated and disappointed in myself.
Sure.
Know
Yeah.
how to do better. I just can't make myself do it all the time. So like I coach golf for a living and I coach golf at a high level for a living. So in my world, it's all about perfects and like trying to make everything right and minimize this. And so you're gonna love this. But I'm going vintage, man. So I've got a bunch of old golf clubs on the way, and I have a newfound friend named Todd Dempsey who makes modern persimmon woods, and we got some baladas, and we're gonna start like playing golf again, man, because
Oh,
that's where I think this industry is losing it, man, because it's all decimal points and X's and O's and like graphs. And like I don't know about you, man, but most people I think got into golf to not have to learn graphs. So like I'm just trying to get back to having fun, man, and like play golf for what it is, which is I think a social game. And I think that that's why we're happy, man, because we're social and we get to share what we're passionate about with a lot of other people.
dude, that's badass. Like, yeah, I idolized Todd when he was a couple years ahead of me at Arizona State, and he wouldn't know
Dude
who
can
I was,
play,
but
dude.
I
Dude
know
can play.
what he does, and I can't believe it. What he did in Q school last year, right? Playing with those,
By the
I
way,
I I
I'm
don't.
not
It's
kidding, man. I,
unbelievable.
I have a sickness. I got deliveries today.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, man. It's gonna be great. But I mean, I think back to San Francisco Golf Club, and I've never been there. I've never stepped on the property, but I have a vision in my head, right? And it's black and white and it's grainy and it's old, man. And it's like I think back to that and I just nobody knew anything. Like people didn't even know the world was round, right? Like I mean, like people knew nothing. And people were out there still perplexed by the same problems that we're perplexed by. And like to me, like that's what golf is about. And I get it, man. Like I've got a QI 10 with a graphite. I got all the cool stuff too. But like there's also like another way to enjoy golf, man. And I think what we've talked about today is just about every way to enjoy golf except like how to swing a golf club,
Awesome. And
which
that,
is kind of cool.
that's a source of enjoyment too. You find in it what's good for you and then do that as much as you can whenever you have time to do it. So, but
Yeah,
you're
we're all just like
clearly
addicts at the end, right? Like we're all just like degenerates and can't get enough. I mean, that's basically what it boils down to.
my wife would absolutely agree with that. I'll finish teaching after a full day, and then I'll come home and I'll eat something. And either if a major's on, I'll start watching that, or after I spend time with the girls and they go to bed, then I'll like pick up
Golf
a putter
channel.
and start working on it. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I don't know. It's a different thing when I'm trying to do it versus other people, and all of them are fun. All of them are great. So
It's
yeah,
wild.
exactly.
So I thought last thing here, you brought up something really interesting. You brought up Nick Saban, and I'm a huge Nick Saban fan. I was freaking heartbroken when he retired. And I mean, I get it, man. Like the guy is way ahead of the curve, and he understands things much better. And he definitely understood that the nil thing was a new thing that he wasn't going to figure out in his time that he had left. But I think if you look at Nick Saban and you look at Bill Belichick, one thing that really stands out to me is like coaches, like, and I'm including us in this conversation, coaches like always demand discipline. We always
Mm,
demand it. Like you got to be disciplined, you got to do the right thing when that time comes, like you got to perform. Like we expect all this discipline. And the one thing that coaches generally do not exhibit is discipline,
mm,
right? Like you think to a lot of college coaches on the sidelines, man, like think about the way that they're leading their team. Like they're going nuts. They're wrecks. They're throwing things. They're cussing. They're kicking. They're screaming. Right. Like I really think though, when you watch Saban, unless it was just like a really bad call and he only did it every now and then, like pretty calm and collected. Bill Belichick, pretty calm and collected. And when we're talking about like ultra high performing, teams or communities or whatever you want to call them, right? Like you're talking about two of the best to do it in their sports, and
indeed.
leadership remain calm. And one thing that I'll say about you is that I think you have a very calming presence, right? And it's like I think that when you talk about like what do high performing places things do, it is create calm, right? It's manage the noise, it's control the controllables, it's really putting a plan together, right? But I think that at the end of the day is really what it takes to be a high performing kind of person and facility and to lead people to high performance.
I two quick things. I think it was in a podcast, maybe with Gio Valiente. He was talking about kind of have your stuff together. because if you're asking other people to do it and you don't do it, it's not going to ring true as much. And so I hope I'm attributing that correctly. But I liked that when I heard that, and I definitely try to do that. And I also, going to UCLA, my whole family except for me kind of went to, my mom went to Cal, but everyone else went to USC, Southern Cal. And so when I went to UCLA, I was disowned from the family. Not really,
I was gonna ask, but I figured.
but but one of the great gifts that I got when I went there, which is unfortunately it wasn't on my radar before I went there, but after, was John Wooden. And I've read a lot, and so has everyone else that's coached and stuff. And he just said, I kind of, I'm not special. I was just a guy who tried to live up to his beliefs as well as possible. But he was
Well
also
said.
all about preparation and doing everything to prepare his team so that once you get to the games, there's not a lot of yelling and that kind of stuff that needs to be done. Someone told me I met a Patriots player that played on the Super Bowl team where they played against the Falcons, and they were down big at halftime. I think it was
27-3,
21-3
yeah.
or something. Yeah. Okay. So,
27-3, yeah.
uh, and they said, I don't know, I'm speaking out of school, but he said something like, what Belichick said to the team at halftime was not this crazy fiery speech and pump up or whatever. He said something like, if you play better, you can win. So I don't know. I mean, the fire speech,
Motivation, right?
there's a time and place sometimes, but there's also a time and place, as you've been saying really well, which is to stay calm and let people know, we'll make adjustments, but you can do this if we've prepared correctly. Have faith in yourself and believe in yourself, and
The
then go
practice,
out and operate.
the
So
practice has to be harder than the competition, or you'll never have
yeah,
success.
yeah.
And one thing that I always remember is a friend of mine told me that he once noticed Brooks Koepka was like looking at a calendar and like there were dates circled. And like he was like, "What are you looking at?" And he's like, "Ah, just like looking at my off days." He's like, "Are those the days circled?" And he's like, "Yeah." And those are like tournament days. And like Brooks looks at tournament days as off days because like he
Ooh.
works out so much harder and everything else during the week to get ready for that like by the time he gets, that's the easy part. He already did the work. And I
I
mean
thought
that
Brooks
dude is,
didn't need to practice like that. That's like he gets no.
I'll tell you what, man, that dude, I've seen him practice and like he doesn't need to practice because one of his practice sessions would last the average dude about 3 years. Like, I mean, it's pretty. He gets to work, man. But I think that once again, like he doesn't look at it the nerdy way, right? He's not going, well, let me chalk it up with you guys, X's and O's. He's going
Yep.
like, hey, if I get my body right and my mind right, I'm gonna come out here and beat the man. And that's
Yep.
just kind of how he sees the world, right? And I think you have to have a little bit of that warrior spirit. But once again, to use the great John Wooden, if you're not prepared, man, it doesn't matter how much bravado you got, you don't have what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Happy for Brooks that he he's did showed it again last year, and then he can do it now as long as he wants to. So it's pretty impressive.
I'm not the naysayer. I think that, there's a lot of people in the golf industry that have hurt feelings over what's been going on. And honestly, anytime the business comes to the forefront, people kind of get, less interested because it's not rah rah and about feelings anymore. But I think
Yeah.
golf's in a great place. I think the performance you're seeing at these signature events is unbelievable. I mean, you got to go out there and you got to shoot 30 under, man. And these aren't easy setups. And what you're seeing performance wise, pretty incredible. But with that said, you are a busy man, and I do not want to keep you anymore. And dude, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been fun.
But this is, as always, I don't get much of it, but I enjoy my time with you very much. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks for focusing. Like you said, I do think golf's in a really good place for sure. I know the other stuff will die down at some point, not that far in the future, and we'll just get back to focusing on the amazing things that are going on. So
Well, that's for
anyway,
sure. And Kevin is always out there doing stuff if you're interested in kind of keeping an eye on him. I don't think he does very much on social media, if anything, but you can kind of pay attention to the men's Harvard team, see how they're playing, see where they're going to be at. One thing, real quick, before we go, I have a couple kids that play at Villanova, and one thing that we've always talked about is the team at Harvard, man. They are professional and they're a good group of men. And the way that they go about representing the game is second to none. So, once again, thank you to Kevin for leading them and helping them become the best they can be. And it's been a real treat because it's very rare that you get to talk to people who have lived a truly incredible life and have really been around some great people, and to share some of that wisdom has been great for all of us. So thanks so much for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe and share this with anybody that you think would be interested. So thanks again to Kevin, and until next time, keep grinding.